I did visit in Iran. And we are long-time friends. I'm not going to say older friends, because we are still young, right? So it's not older friends, long-time friends through Mars. And Julie, CV, brief introduction, I'm not going to read it, just turn on too many. So Julie is a distinguished research professor at University of Georgia, Department of Math and Science Education. And her research focuses on how to best support science teachers in building their knowledge and instructional practices. And the results from her studies are in numerous journals, books, and editorials, and so on. So without overdue, Julie,
do it.
welcome.
All right, great. It's great to be here. So this is, just to get a sense, this is a U.S. school, and these are our pre-service teachers. And so I'm working with them. So just a little scene from what goes on in, we'll go this way. All right. Did I do something wrong? Forgive me, anyone. Oh, okay, well, hey. There we go. Okay, now I've got it. So anyway, I'm honored to be here today, and I really appreciate the invite. Thank you so much, and it's lovely to see you in Hampshire. It always makes me very happy. I don't know if you know how lucky you are to have this person here. I'm very, very sad that he is no longer in the U.S., but his work has had enormous impact in the science education community internationally. His work in measurement and his work with teachers has been profound. And this year he got a very high award. He became an FED-ETARC fellow, which is a huge distinguished accomplishment. So I just wanted you to know just how lucky you are to have him. So it's great to be here again, and thank you for inviting me. So I'm also excited to be here. Let me go back, because this year is your 45th anniversary, right?
Yeah.
What a great time to have you speak. And so I thought about that. I thought, I'm coming in on the 45th anniversary, and so I've made 45 pages of comments for today. And I have 45 slides. I'm just joking, I don't. Don't worry, I don't have that many. I have about 20 pages, 20 slides, 25 slides, and I have probably a little under 40, 45 minutes of comments today. So you won't get the whole 45. But I'm looking forward to talking to you about a passion of mine, which is newly hired teachers. And I'm really hoping today in our talk that you begin to understand and consider the value of newly hired teachers and how important they are in our work. And newly hired teachers are teachers who are in their first 5 years of teaching, right? So they've just gone through their pre-service program, and now they're actually in the field. And they're just getting experience, they're just building their capacity as teachers. In my talk today, what I want to do is talk a little bit about how I came to this topic and how I selected it and why I've pursued it for over 30 years. And I want to talk a little bit about the intellectual side of why we need to attend to these teachers, and it's important for us as scholars. And then I also want to talk about what we can learn from following the research of these teachers. And then I'll have a few comments about what does this mean for going forward. So it's a little bit of the outline of what I hope to cover. So my background, I actually come from a family of teachers. How many people are in here from a family of teachers? Yeah, right? There's something about it. We come from a family of teachers, and it's great. My father was a physics teacher. My mother was a biology teacher. And this is my father, the physics teacher, telling me about a chicken. And that's not a chicken. That's actually a rooster. That just goes to show that he didn't really know what he was talking about. But the one thing, what does a parent who's a teacher always tell you when you're growing up in their household? Don't become a teacher, right? And what's the first thing I did? Because I was 20 years old and I didn't want to listen. I became a teacher and went on to have a long career in this field. So I taught middle school science and high school science, and I also have worked at the university setting. I've worked at 5 different universities, and I've also worked in Washington, D.C., our capital, to actually advance science education, because it's really important to me. I wanted to make sure that we had a good representation. Right now, currently, I work at the University of Georgia. It's in the southeast corner of the United States. It's the very first university in the U.S. to be dedicated to public education. It's the first university in the U.S. So in 1785, we were chartered as the first public institution. I come from a college of ed that's very, very big, probably one of the biggest in the country. It has over 400 faculty members in it, over 4,500 students. And it's named the Mary Frances Early College of Ed. It's named after the first Black graduate of our university. And she happened to be in music education. So there's a lot of significance about being at this university. So in my own work of approaching early career teachers, I came at it from 2 different ways. In my own professional work, I was really interested in professional learning of teachers. I really wanted to understand how teachers learn in school settings and how we can support them through professional development programs. My early work was around creating classrooms where we had exemplary teachers teaching science, and teachers would come in and watch them teach, and then after the lesson, they would go to a separate room and they would talk with one another about the teaching of the lesson. This was before we knew that lesson study existed. So it was kind of a novel idea to have teachers talking about their own practice. We now know lesson study, which is very prevalent in Asia, is incredibly high impact practice and how important it is. That just got me thinking a lot about the professional learning of teachers. So I kept working on this idea, and at one point I ran a program and I had teachers in the program. Half of them were new teachers in their first 5 years, and half were experienced teachers. And I wanted to see, as they, over the year, worked with the teacher, as they talked to the teacher about their teaching, how did they change their own inquiry practice in their own classrooms. And what I found was something very important. The newly hired teachers really wanted to do inquiry, science is inquiry, but they had a really hard time enacting it, even talking to the teacher and even getting all the suggestions. The experienced teachers didn't value inquiry teaching. They valued traditional teaching, but yet they could do inquiry instruction. Isn't that fascinating? So this really interesting dynamic. I'm like, what's going on here? Why are these new teachers loving this so much but having so much problem? But just the contrast of the experienced teachers not being able to do it. So that really set me up wondering about new teachers. At the same time this study was going on, I was working with pre-service teachers, helping them to learn how to use inquiry as new teachers. And we would work in schools, we would talk about how to do good inquiry, we talked about the different ways that inquiry existed. And one year I just said, well, I've been doing this for a few years, it was probably 3 years out, and I said, I'm a pretty good methods instructor. The students like me, they're doing well, they know what inquiry instruction is. And I said, I've got to find out. I'm going to follow them into their first years and see how good they are. And I followed them into their first years, and I found that they did nothing that was inquiry. So then there I was. I was at this point where I have new teachers, I know there's something going on, and in my own practice, my new teachers aren't doing what I want. So it led me just down this path. I'm like, I have got to figure out this area. And this is what I found. I went and did a review of research, and I tried to find all the studies that were out there, and they fell into 2 camps. There were a majority of the studies were either around pre-service teachers or in-service teachers. There was very little about newly hired teachers. This time in a teacher's practice when it is the most difficult, right? It is the most challenging, it's the most formative, and there's no research around there. And this is exactly what I found. Roughly, of the 285 articles that I found, what was like 136 were around pre-service education, slightly more, 140 odd were around in-service education. Only 20 articles were talking about what happened in that middle year. Now, how can you build a continuum of teacher knowledge if you don't know what it looks like to develop throughout the career of a teacher? So this is where this whole story begins. And this is, what started or launched my career. So for me, it made sense that we actually studied new teachers. But I think there's a bigger argument for doing it. So this is the second part of what I want to talk about, why they're so important. So the most important thing we can do right now is scientific literacy, right? There's no negotiation about this. We are living in a scientifically changing world. There is not one way that we don't interact with science in our lives. And it is coming at us faster than we know, right? We are going to make decisions about how we do agriculture. We have new technologies on the rise in terms of medicine. CRISPR, who would have thought about how ubiquitous this would be at this point? It's crazy, right? We have energy needs that we need to think about. We have a changing global environment. And on top of that, we still want the enterprise of science. These are all the things that are coming at us, and our society needs to be scientifically literate. They need to be able to make informed decisions about all of these, and they need to be able to think about in a scientific way, critically thinking about any of these areas as they engage with them. And science teachers are on the forefront of this. Science teachers are producing the next generation of our scientifically literate citizens. So science teachers are really, really important right now. In the U.S., we have a way of thinking about how we want to teach science. And we want to teach it so that everybody has an opportunity to learn that, to learn how to think scientifically along with understanding specific principles in science. We call this the next generation science standards. Every country has their own standards, but I'm just going to give an example of how we're trying to promote scientific literacy. In our standards, what we do is we anchor everything in a phenomenon. And that's an idea, you probably have the same thing, that's really interesting to students. It could be a question, it's usually an observable event, something that people can collect data about, students can collect data about, something that students can investigate. A good phenomenon might be how are dinosaurs of yesterday related to the birds of today? That's a good phenomenon. Or how do typhoons occur? That'd be relevant for you. Or for us, we do something around the Grand Canyon. How come the Grand Canyon is so big? These are really powerful questions that students can investigate. And as they investigate these questions, they engage in three different things, right? The teacher plans this. There are these disciplinary core ideas. These are the content areas that we really want to focus on. And those could be in geology, it could be erosion, in biology, it could be heredity or genetics, in physics or physical sciences, it could be matter. We have cross-cutting concepts, and those are ideas that go across all of the disciplines. It could be patterns, or it could be energy, it could be change. But an important one that I focus on a lot are the science and engineering practices. And there are 8 of these practices. There's asking questions, planning and carrying out investigations, right? Analyzing and interpreting data, building models, engaging in argument, or obtaining information and sharing. So we're trying to make sure that all of these things happen in every lesson. And I want to break this down a little bit more. These 8 things we typically break into 3 bigger categories. These are the investigating type practices where we're asking questions, trying to figure things out. Sense making is where we're trying to understand, and critiquing are the opportunities that we have to really say, like, I don't agree, I disagree, or this could be different, right? So again, in a lesson, you want all of these to happen. So I want to show you a lesson, a US lesson, a very small video of it. And in this lesson. It's an elementary classroom, and we'll talk a little bit about it when I finish. There is the focus is on earth sciences, the disciplinary core ideas around erosion. The cross-cutting concept is going to be change, and there's going to be a few different practices that the students are going to use, and I want to see if we can perhaps find them, okay? All right, so let's put this up.
You don't agree? Want to say anything more about that?
I don't agree because there's water and there's not really water there. But it doesn't change the land.
What else about that? What can you say?
It doesn't change the land because that's hard.
And so why does that matter?
Because then the land doesn't change. Concrete can get changed sometimes because it can get cracks.
What do you think, Sandy?
Change.
Okay, how come?
Because here is dry, but when it's going to rain, it's going to get wet. So change.
Oh, come on, put it here. I want to put it here. Yeah? Oh, she disagrees. Okay, why do you disagree?
Because, right, it wasn't, well, maybe the day before that day, it was raining, but now it's dry, so if it doesn't rain again, it won't be the same.
Okay. All right. Pretty powerful. Just a small clip. Pretty good, huh? Is that, yeah. So what kind of practices do you think you saw? Did you see students making explanations from evidence? Lovely. They were looking at the different handouts and they were saying, look, this is what I think I see when I look across those, right? What happened when the student did this? I disagree. What is that? It's the start of an argument, right? I was just in a class the other day with young children, and students, when they don't agree with something, they hold up this, a C, which means I challenge them. Powerful, right? So they're teaching them that this science is this really rich way of thinking. And in this, you probably saw too, there's an emphasis on trying to think about change, that cross-cutting concept. So this is the instruction, this is a small snippet, this is the instruction that we have a vision of in the U.S. And this is what we want to try to do in our classrooms. But this is really hard teaching, right? It looks easy, but it's hard. And for new teachers, it's pretty hard, especially if they haven't ever experienced it. So this, I'm going to draw this back. This is why it makes a difference how we prepare our teachers. So Comfrey, and I'm sorry this is small, I'm happy to send you the chapter. Comfrey, when I asked him, I said, look, you know, what can you tell me about the composition of teacher training programs across the world? He goes, oh, that's a great question. So he went and he looked at across every nation or country and was looking to see what kind of general guidelines existed about how teacher programs should look. And what he found is most teacher programming is broken up into 4 different areas. One is general pedagogical knowledge, that knowledge that has no content attached to it, learning how to do cooperative learning, for example. Subject matter knowledge, which is huge, right? Most teacher training programs spend a lot of time on subject matter knowledge. This unique knowledge of PCK, which is the ability of a teacher to turn content into learning for students, doesn't get very much time in a teacher training program. And that's the most important if you want to do this kind of teaching, right? You need to understand how do we make the content actually look, you know, learnable to the students. And then the practicum side of it, which is where, you know, it's having students, pre-service students, actually work in classrooms and work out these different knowledge pieces. What's interesting, what you see is in most programs across the world, right? We have a big emphasis on SMK, subject matter knowledge, not so much an emphasis on PCK, and that's one of the most important pieces. So our teachers are really coming not well prepared, maybe not as prepared as we need them, or not as well started as we wanted. So it's really important that we think about how our teacher training programs work to set our students up, our teachers up to be lifelong learners. I just highlighted China and Macau here so you can see how they found, and you may disagree or you can challenge this. I'm good, and you can tell me I was trying to find something that was relevant and I thought this would work, but I'd be interested to hear about that. thing we're facing right now, and I looked a lot into this because I was really curious, we're facing a teacher shortage in a lot of places. And this is out of UNESCO, it's a 2023 report, and it's looking at the number of countries, and it's not comprehensive by any means. It looks at the different groupings of countries, and what you see are, there's the 0 line, and it can either be negative or positive. This is only in the secondary setting. This isn't for primary teachers, but this tracks on with what the primary data is. The red countries are countries that are potentially producing enough teachers. So if we go to Europe and North America, this is the US, 11 of the countries that they sampled are probably producing enough, but 33 are not. We're coming up against a shortage. And if you look at, I think, Southeast Asia, you see 2 countries, and they didn't sample comprehensively. One of them, I believe, is Singapore, and they also put Philippines in that group too. They said China was producing enough elementary teachers, but not enough secondary teachers, but that's another graph. This, we see that 9 countries are not producing enough teachers. Again, you can challenge this. I found this very interesting. So worldwide, UNESCO has said, we're facing a shortage of teachers. And when you have a shortage of teachers, what you find is you have a lot of new teachers, right? Because you've got new people coming in and going out to try to fill the void. So this is the setting that you have, and it's unfortunate. In the US, this is what happened to us. We have a shortage of teachers, but we have it because, and we have, this is 2 different, this is a span of over 30 years. We used to originally, this is the blue line, is a long time ago, teachers would get into teaching and they would stay, and as they had more experience, they would drop out. In the US, what we find is we have a lot of teachers who enter in, and then they drop out within their first 5 years. This is what I think you're potentially going to see. You're probably tracking the same way that we are. So this is why we really have to worry about our newly hired teachers, right? We're going to have a lot of them, and we've got to make sure that we're preparing them well. So we have a reason to study these. So what's gained by looking at newly hired teachers? And I think this is the next step, but I'm compelling you to think about it, right? It's really important that we have a continuum of learning in our teachers. And if we study newly hired teachers, and we try to unpack both of these a little, they can guide our decision-making about programming and how we support newly hired teachers, so in this area. But it can also really depict dimensionality of teacher learning, which I think is something we need to do. There aren't many studies around newly hired teachers. With more of those studies, we begin to understand how newly hired teachers, or how teachers in general, science teachers of interest to me, develop specifically. So I want to talk a little bit how we use this decision-making in our own work at the University of Georgia. At the University of Georgia, we're very interested in equitable work. And that means when a teacher walks into the classroom, we want to make sure that every student has a chance to be involved in that lesson. Because every student, we believe, has a chance to be the next Nobel laureate. So how do we make sure that every student has that opportunity, right? It's important. And that's all around thinking about how do we create an equitable learning environment. We have other standards too, like teachers have to know the content, they have to know the students, they have to know how to assess. But this is one that we were interested in. Our program developed a task force to look at this specifically. And what we wanted to do was know how our newly hired teachers who graduated from our program were creating equitable environments. So we did 2 things. The first thing was we surveyed every graduate that we had for the last 5 years, and we asked them if they were well prepared to teach in an equitable way. And what's really unfortunate is more than 50% said no, they weren't. We're not prepared, right? We don't feel confident. We're okay, we're moderately well prepared. We don't accept that as acceptable. We want them to be highly prepared. The next thing we did was we analyzed the syllabus of all the faculty working with students to understand if there was any equity involved in it. And what we found was in our own syllabi that we were not helping students understand equity at all. So these 2 pieces told us that we had to make a change in what we were doing. By using data from our new teachers, we can make informed decisions about what to do next. And this is what we ended up doing. We ended up creating a book club. So every other, I teach the methods course, every other methods class, so every other week, for an hour at the beginning of one of the classes, we would have a discussion about a book about being a black student. And it wasn't something, these were important discussions. So we read, these are very big books in the US, Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria was one. We read We Want to Do More Than Survive, Bettina Love, who was at our campus at the time, and then White Folks in the Hood. But these books really talk about how hard it is to be a student who is not in the white mainstream in a school in Georgia. And we would sit down as a group and we agreed that anything we said in the group would never be shared outside of the group. That was our first rule. And then we talked about what we had to read and how it made us feel, what we learned, what was new, what was something we had to think about. And what was interesting is in my classes, I often have students who are black or Hispanic, and they would share their personal stories of racism that they experienced as they read these books for the rest of the students in the class. So it was a really eye-opening experience. So this was a change that we made that we hope really changed how our students grew in their practical experiences and their field experiences after they graduated. The other thing I think we need to attend to is the dimensionality of teaching. When I talk about the dimensionality of teaching, studying new teachers can give us more dimensionality. It gives us a better understanding of time. It could be years, it could be experience, it could be the space that new teachers are working in, or it could be the process of learning. And these are all areas that need to be explored around new teachers. So by having that, we start to understand more of the continuum of how teachers develop. Then I want to give you two examples of dimensionality. This is the work that we're doing right now, and it's around resiliency. We're really interested in how new teachers begin to develop their resilience. And the question we're asking is, what resources support the learning of new secondary science teachers? We're using, our theoretical framing is around resources and capital, and the resources that we're really interested in are social resources, which are the people that they interact with. How do new teachers in their early years interact with the teachers at their school? How do they interact with people outside the school, the community, even their students? How do they capitalize on their knowledge? How do they capitalize on how they feel about things? How do they capitalize on their emotions? That's some of the other work we have going on around here. Anything that's human that they hold on to. And the other part is, how do they capitalize on materials? Materials are huge in the teaching of science, right? You need beakers if you're in chemistry, you need microscopes if you're in biology, you need cars to crash if you're in physics. So we're looking at how teachers use resources. And our question that we ask these teachers, so we have a group of teachers that we're following, newly hired teachers, and we've been asking them, what resources, we don't ask about resources, we ask what are things that are important to you that support your learning as a teacher, a science teacher, over time. So in this last year, you've been teaching, what's really been an experience or something that you engaged with that's really supported your learning? And then we ask them to tell us more about that. So, and I'll explain this plot to you. So this is the plot that we have. These are the different resources, and this is 25 teachers. And because we wanted to contrast, we have experienced teachers in here too. Again, trying to get out what's new about newly hired teachers. We have the social resources. Let's see if this works. Yeah. We have the social resources again, how they interact with people, material, the things and the items, and the personal resources, which are the mental facilities. So it might be, if I'm engaged in something, maybe it makes me think of something, it makes me understand the content more. That's the personal resource. If you look at this, you'll notice it goes from student to teacher to school to district to outside of the district. These are different individual kind of areas. They're not discrete, but we coded the data by if there was a discussion of a student, if there was a discussion of a teacher, if there was a discussion of a school resource, a district resource, or an out-of-district resource. The next thing we did was we coded the direction of the resource use. So if a teacher said, look, I was talking to another teacher and I realized that I wasn't thinking about the content correctly, that would be this line, right? A teacher is talking to another teacher, which is a social resource, but they're activating their personal resource. That's why we coded it personal and not social. Likewise, if a teacher looks at a student and said, oh, I saw what the students were doing, and I began to understand that they didn't know the content as well. So what we're seeing here is what are the main lines of what teachers are drawing on that support, that are from different resources. And what we see are a couple interesting things. Teachers are drawing from students. So they're really looking at students in the class and trying to figure out what's working. We don't often talk about that, but teachers are really active learners. They're also engaging with their colleagues. But on the same sense, teachers are also getting a lot of resources from the school level. That's the curricular materials, the teaching guides, any of those materials are coming down. And what they're saying here in this instance is the school had a workshop and it was really good for me to learn about what I need to be teaching, right? So it's coming from the district. And then finally, or from the school level, and then finally the district may have said, oh, we want you to learn how to use a new assessment system. We're holding a district-wide in-service, and this is for everybody. And the teacher said, oh, that was great, I learned a new assessment system. So these are the 5 larger areas that we see. And this is pretty important because this is telling you where the sites of potential learning are within the school. But we wanted to know, like, this is, what's interesting is you have a, oops, let me go back. Let's go back. There we go. Go back to that old-fashioned way. So you have a large line here. And a teacher in the U.S., I was talking to her about this the other day, and she said, oh, but most district professional development is really bad in the U.S. And I said, that's true. Because every teacher who talked about the districts also made a comment about the district being bad. So these are all the ways that teachers felt they weren't supported. So it literally washes that out. So it's just fascinating to think about the most important part is probably for teachers and for new teachers is this area. And we did. We broke the data out by new teachers and experienced teachers, and right away you can start to see the differences. New teachers are really focused on this learning environment, which is in schools, and the experienced teachers, this is fascinating, they're focused on students, which makes perfect sense, but they're learning to draw more on external resources. And what's interesting is these external resources, and we've tracked this in different socio-analysis, are actually passed on to the new teacher. But for this is really powerful. This tells us if we're going to be supporting new teachers, we need to start working with them around where they're teaching their lessons, and we need to be planning with them, co-planning to help them understand how to teach in really powerful ways. So again, adding some more insights into how we can support our new teachers in different ways. The last piece of dimensionality I want to talk about is an experiment that was done by Yushi, and you were incredibly helpful as we were tackling this. In this, we're really interested about thinking about how knowledge gets translated into instructional practice. And what we want to use as the indicator is what teachers notice. So if I'm thinking about I want to do something, if I'm going to translate it into practice, we want to find out how strong that knowledge is or how strong those motivations are. And we're going to do that by measuring teacher noticing. What do teachers notice? And to get at teacher noticing, what we do is we play the same video you watched, or similar, and we ask teachers, I want you to let me know when you see something that's important to the teaching assignments and let me know why. So we play the video, the teacher raises their hand or says, hey, I want you to stop, so I want to talk about that. That's important because, or that's not important because. We had them watch 3 different videos, one around argumentation, data analysis, and modeling. And then we assess the degree of how they attended or interpreted the video. So did they focus on the content? Were they able to identify the SEP correctly? And were they able to talk about why that SEP was important? Right? So that's the proxy for knowledge. And what we find is when teachers kind of have this knowledge, it's really helpful for them to see how they should be teaching in a classroom. It gives them what we call professional vision. And that's the theoretical framing that resides around. The idea that teachers can see what's possible and probable. And what we're trying to do is take a measure of what that possibility looks like and how well they understand it. And this is what we found. What we found is, and this was among 33 newly hired teachers, that they were able to attend, right? That wasn't a problem. They could see the practice, but what they couldn't see, they couldn't interpret its use well. If they really knew the practice, if they could talk about the practice at a high level, like, oh, that's data collection and data analysis, and that's the first part, or a very important part of any investigation, they would likely go on to make an interpretive or evaluative comment that would say something like, and by having students do that kind of data analysis, they're building some important skills of doing science as well as building important skills about analyzing the data, right? So we're looking for two pieces. But they really were able to point out argumentation, data, and model. They were able to attend to those. It was frustrating that they didn't have a big interpretation. That's a problem for us, and so we've made some changes in our own work because of that. But it just shows how difficult it is to build that deep knowledge that teachers need. The other analysis we were interested in, so in the U.S., out-of-field teaching is huge. Teachers in the U.S., 60% of the time, teach in content areas they have no expertise in. Right? So you have a biology teacher walking into a chemistry class and teaching chemistry 60% of the time. That's a big problem, right? But if you want to, what we were at least somewhat happy to see is when we showed them a video outside of the disciplinary area, they were able to identify the practices still. It seemed that we did a couple checks on this. There was no way to, that being able to attend did not have any correlation to disciplinary area. They could spot the practice regardless of the content area. That's good. If they're teaching out of field, that means that at least they're going to be able to do some of the practices. So we were happy about that. What this means is we just really need to work much more diligently in having teachers understand not only what the practices are, but why they're important. So I think when we talk about dimensionality, and I'm kind of looking forward, I think there are some really important research approaches, and these are some places I know that you're pursuing, some that we're also pursuing. I think transnational studies, especially when we have more opportunities to talk about teacher training, transnational studies are really important, where we compare and look at different countries, but we need to do it in a very thoughtful way. Longitudinal studies that track new teachers from their pre-service program into their first years are critical. We need more of those studies. And we need more literature reviews that try to start to aggregate some of what we're finding around new teachers. Theoretical orientations, there are any number that would be great, but we need to really have strong theoretical work. If we don't have good theoretical work, it doesn't really make the contribution that it needs to make. I certainly see learning, context, and identity as very important theoretical areas. And I think we need to start really thinking, what do systems of support look like for newly hired teachers? We're in a really cool time with AI. How do we draw on some of the best of what AI has, of avoiding some of the worst, to help support new teachers? And how can we get to personalized learning? We know more about how teachers are learning in their first years. How can we give them the support they need at that moment to be the best they can to navigate that really turbulent time? So going forward, and this is where we'll wrap this up. I have a few final comments, right? I think it's important that we focus on the newly hired teachers, and hopefully I've made somewhat of a case to you that I think we need to look at that. Right? We need to look at it because we're going to have a lot of new teachers. They're coming. Whether we need to really think about how we're going to support them, and we really need to have well-qualified teachers in our classroom because we need a scientifically literate society. And our science teachers today are preparing our citizens of tomorrow. I know this, right? They're really, really important. I think when we focus on newly hired teachers, we can make better decisions about the programs that we enact, right? That's really important. We can actually look, are we really preparing our new teachers? Do they feel well prepared now that they're in the field? How can we do the best that we can do that we've been trained to do? And if we're at big universities, like you are, like I am, we have a responsibility to be in this we start collecting this data, we can better depict that continuum of learning. We just don't know how it works. We have no idea what the mediators or the moderators are around the first years of teaching. We can make some good guesses, but just some more empirical data would be useful. So we have this responsibility. We have to do this, right? New teachers. We can't ignore this. We can not only work in pre-service and in-service, we have to focus in on new teachers. So if you have a new teacher that's graduated from a program, follow up. Every contribution counts right now. It's important for the field. You know, and I think our time is now, right? We can't put this off another year. We can't put this off 2 more years. It's really important that we do this now and at this time. We just can't, as we say, we can't kick the can down the road. And I think the last thing that's really important for us as academics, as we're collecting this data, it's really, really important. I don't know how it is. I was trying to figure this out here. It seems like you do work with your local government. It's important that we advocate for our teachers, right? So as we get data, we have to share that data with the public. We have to let them know what we do. We have to share that data with our policymakers so they know the important work that we're doing, so we stay funded, so that we can help make a difference in the lives of future teachers. And this is not a role that we've had before, but it's really, really important. So with that, just want to say thank you, and this is all the students. You can follow me on ResearchGate or LinkedIn. We definitely post our research up on ResearchGate, and these are just all the students who've worked with me over the years on this project. So I'm under 45 minutes, there you go. And thank you very much.
You're going to take some questions?
Yeah, I'm happy to
Okay.
take some questions.
Okay, we got time.
And if you need a question, I can give you the question.
Can I ask the first question?
Of course.
Okay, thank you so much. I was waiting. Thank you so much for the talk. I was waiting for you to land on the 45th slide.
I know you're waiting. And 45 pages, I know, I felt.
So I was very much intrigued by the diagram showing how teachers draw upon different sources of
Oh, the Sankey
support,
plots,
right?
the
So the
Sankey
material, personal, that one.
Yeah.
So I was wondering about how do you have data about how those teachers use the different sources for doing what?
Oh,
Their
yeah.
professional development.
Oh,
So the kind of the
absolutely.
nuance is probably more important for innovational effort, right? Just
Yeah, that's a great point. We were in the right, it was geared towards how does it help you in the teaching of science towards this vision, but you're right, like how do they use it? Is it helping them confirm the practices they're doing, or is it putting them in new ways, right?
or even classroom management.
Yeah,
So-
classroom management. I think this, this is what got me. I think we have this deficit view of new teachers, and I think sometimes we have to kind of switch that a little. Like they think, and I think we get caught in this too, like we see one thing and we're worried about the management, but we're not seeing all the other good stuff that's going on. And I think that's something we have to work to. But I agree. I think, and we're in the process of coding through this to actually break it out to see, how they're using it. But what's interesting, what we are seeing on the student side, I do know this, is that when they draw on the students, it's both an emotional response, like they're seeing, they get excited because the students are excited, so that reinforces their teaching of science's inquiry. And they also see when students don't understand, so they plan something or an adjustment, which I think is really powerful. So, but I agree with you. I think that would be a great international study. I mean, I like this because we've never thought, we never thought before about just asking the question, so how do you learn? We always assume that teachers learn because we impose that standard on it, but when we ask them, what are you learning from it?
I was imagining, thank you. So I was
Yeah.
imagining for novice teachers in the first couple of years, thinking about the teaching urban schools, the challenge of, with the classroom management. So, a general issue. So the personal or emotional aspects might just be, maybe more centered. The resilience aspects of themselves probably plays a more critical role in navigating those kind of classroom complexities. Because I'm not a science teacher, so
No, but I love this
only talk about
question.
classroom management as a generic.
It's a generic
kind of,
construct, yeah. I love this, and what we did was, this is the talk I'm giving on Thursday, we tracked their emotions while they were teaching. And so, we have videos of them teaching, and we went back and said, kind of what were the emotions you were experiencing with? And these are new teachers, and the preponderance of those emotions are actually joy and happiness a dosage issue, right? It's so much, it's distracting them from all the good. So it's a powerful question to ask that, and when you start seeing that teachers can see all these good things that are happening, we just need to figure out how do we capitalize on that to help drive forward the instruction that they're doing.
Sure.
Management's easy to, take care of. I mean, that's those small things, but getting teachers to use inquiry by realizing the joy that students experience is really important. So you're absolutely, I completely agree with you, and we're actually looking at that right now.
Yeah, thank
It's
you
a
very
cool
much.
question.
Yeah, thank you.
Another question?
I have a question, because you at the beginning mentioned that the newly hired teachers between the pre-service education and the in-service education. This is the between process, and I was wondering whether you include the teachers that without pre-service education experience. It's like the second grade newly hired science teachers.
Yeah.
They only have degrees in maybe the science related subjects, like maybe the teacher who graduated from the micromolecular materials, they can also become science teachers as well.
It's easy, right? Do you have that problem here? Do you have teachers who people who are becoming science teachers without research teaching? Yeah.
So you practice the, there's some in school.
There are some.
Yes, yeah.
How many?
We call it out of field teachers, right?
Yeah, they're out of
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
And Professor Zhou Yishu ever
Okay.
did research on this one, but I didn't read his papers.
It's not as serious as in the US.
It's really serious in the U.S.
I know,
It's serious
I
in a
know.
lot of other countries. It seems,
Yeah.
in my investigation of China and Macau, and I was trying to understand, this doesn't seem to be as big of an issue for
Yeah.
Macau. It seems like you have a well-respected teaching
Right.
force, and you don't have as much out-of-field teaching. It becomes more of an issue for some of the other countries that are around you,
Right.
potentially. I think, am I right on, I don't know if Japan and Korea are facing some kind of, the teachers aren't as, there's a
Right,
case of
right.
well-being that's
Right.
coming up, so we tend to be a little anomalous here. But I don't think you're, and this I don't understand, you could tell me, do you think you will have a teacher shortage? I don't think you will. I mean, Macau will. I think Macau will probably supply teachers for other countries. Or do you think Macau in 5 years may have a science teacher shortage?
Probably not.
Yeah.
A big reason is the declining birth rate.
Yeah, right.
That's a huge issue
Yeah.
facing Macau now. So teachers actually worried.
They're losing their jobs.
Yeah, losing their
I
jobs.
read something on, I was
Yeah.
reading, which is crazy, right?
I
So
know,
you're
I
going to
know.
be an exporter of teachers.
Yeah, a big issue. But overall, it's much more stable, the teaching force in mainland China and Macau.
It seemed like what I was reading, and I don't know, it's hard to get data on mainland China, but what I saw, you can correct me if you challenge me, is that your primary workforce teaching workforce in China is probably stable. It's going to be the secondary workforce that might be the problem. But I don't, that was from UNESCO.
The tennis, are you paying attention to tennis international teacher survey?
No, I haven't seen that.
Yeah,
Oh, Talus, yes,
Talus,
yeah. I do like that survey.
So 2024 results were released just last year.
Okay, so then I haven't seen those, but yeah.
So on that chart,
Yeah.
mainland China only represented by Shanghai once.
That's right.
One city, right? So for that city, it is really, attrition is not an issue at all.
But you have a rural situation. We were talking about this yesterday.
That's right.
The rural situation, like the rural situation in the
Right.
US, is
Right.
something to keep in mind.
So we don't know the whole picture.
Yeah. That was hard for me to I was trying to understand the whole picture of the.
No, we don't
Yeah.
understand the whole picture.
Yeah, but I agree with you on the think when you start looking at desegregating them by location, I think that's interesting.
So back to Chen's
Yeah, back to your question.
It's about auto field.
Yeah, the out of field. So does it count the out of field teaching? So, right, we're cutting this out right now. In the US, so in Texas, but they're an anomalous state because they're such a big state. They produce more teachers without teacher certification than any other state in the country.
Right.
In fact, they produce more teachers that don't have certification than do, which is crazy, right? So we really, that's again why these first years become even more important, because you have teachers who don't have the qualifications who are in there. I think you can disaggregate this data really nicely to look at what are the needs of these teachers who have no certification who are teaching in the first year. That's a completely different experience than a teacher who has some or very little. But how do you, the question comes, and this is what we're tracking right now in Georgia, is how do we support those first year teachers who are coming in with different certification levels, who are teaching out of field and teaching in different ways? That's a huge problem. And what we're proposing in Georgia, we just got a grant to do this, is we're creating this statewide online virtual mentoring system in collaboration with the Georgia Department of Ed, in collaboration with our science teachers and our science supervisors. So, because teachers who work remotely don't have, they often don't have a colleague they can turn to, they don't know where to turn, that's a huge issue. They don't know what resources is the right resource to ask, to access. So we're really trying to think strategically, how do we in this virtual setting create a personalized mechanism using outstanding teacher leaders to help support these teachers? And there's a lot of moving parts to this program, but we're trying to address that. So I agree, that's a huge problem. That's a long way around to say you're right. That is a huge problem. Does that help a little? Does that create? I think I'm making it more murky for you, but I'm making it clearer. That's a great question.
The notion of dimensionality, that's a new concept to me. So is that the framework you have?
It's a framework that we're working on in our
Uh-huh.
place, but it doesn't have, there's limitations of it, right? But it's what we're trying to capture. It builds on Feynman Nemtzer's earlier work by thinking about induction as as a process, as an event, or as a circumstance. And she talked about the different ways that it occurred. But what we're trying to do is thinking about it in a time frame. And it could be this very short time frame, or it could be 5 years with adequate pieces of space that surrounds it. It may hold up or not, but we're working with this right now.
So today you only present
I did.
resources and capitals and the noticing.
Yeah.
That's really true, right? What are other things?
Well, we have
Under dimensionality.
the time one we have. I don't think the other ones are time. We have studies on newly hired teachers in induction programs.
Okay.
So, right, that would probably fit more in the process would be noticed. The space would be like the resources. The time would be. And I have a slide. I can put up the slide that we have. I'm going to talk about this on Thursday about induction programs. But we know if you have teachers who are in the first 2 years, if they have a mentor who is in their science field, who's mentoring them, it makes a difference in how they teach science. And we set up an experiment that had 4 different groups. We followed 100 teachers over 5 years, 100 first year teachers over 5 years. And a quarter of those teachers had a general mentor, somebody in the school just to help them talk to them about what you should do. 2 of those groups had mentors. One was an online science mentor, and one was a science mentor who was in the school and in partnership with the university. And the other group was a group of new teachers who had no mentor. And we found when they had a science mentor that in the early years, it made a difference in the initial 2 years. It helped them teach more science. It helped them have more productive classroom lessons. But what happened was they reverted by year 3, 4, and 5 into more the school setting. There was a chance that the school could socialize them into the norms of the school. So if a school, a lot of teachers at the school said, these kids can't do this, the new teachers came in for 2 years and were like, yeah, we can do this, we're going to do this. And the mentor's saying, yeah, you got this right. But after those 2 years, they fell into the, kind of the trap of what the school socialization was like. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, that's a long way to go around that. I do have examples, but I wanted to keep it under 45 minutes because it is the 45th anniversary.
This is a powerful framework.
I know it needs a lot of work. Maybe we can work on that together. It'll be fun. I'd enjoy it.
Any other questions?
Any other questions? So how similar or different is this? I mean, are new teachers something you've thought of? Teachers in their first years. Have you thought about how different new teachers are or not?
Based on my personal experience, because I used to be a new hire science teachers for the high school.
Yeah.
I taught chemistry. And then the first challenge I met at that time was that I had no idea about curriculum.
That's right, right?
Yes, and I have no preparation for the slides for teaching. So I have no idea who I can get to ask for help and how I can organize my knowledge structures for the high school teaching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's huge. So how many people in here were teachers? How many people in here have been a teacher?
I mean, you taught in K-12 school.
K-12 school. How was that first year? Did you like it? Was it fun? It was struggling, right? But it doesn't have to be that way, right? What would have made it better? And I think that's the, right? And it leaves kind of, it's something we just need to think about, right? How do we create colleagues that can be better, offer some better support, and how can we take better care of I'll talk about this on Thursday. How do we care about our own teachers and worry about their well-being? Because it's really important.
In mainland China, mentoring is mandatory, right? In the first year, you are assigned a mentor. Official
Are they
mentor.
in field?
In field?
They
yes.
are in field.
Yeah. So that is different than the U.S. U.S. is
Right.
kind of optional, right?
It's unfunded. It's an
Unfunded.
It's an unfunded
After
mandate.
school districts.
So how well does it work to have an assigned mentor? This is like, so we do have schools where you're supposed to have an assigned mentor. And sometimes the new teachers say, yeah, I had an assigned mentor. This is the other thing we found out about the teachers that they access. They don't access their mentors.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
They access somebody else, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
they may not like their mentors. They may not agree with what their mentors are saying, and they don't like the mentors sometimes have. It's not, but then they find another teacher who's similar in experience, who's trying new things, and that becomes their confident, right? It gives them more support than the mentor
Right,
does.
right.
That applies to our assistant professors too.
I know, right? Yeah, we do the same thing to our system.
That's right. So Chen, how did your mentor help you when you were teaching?
Or not.
Or not.
Or not.
I think she helped me a little bit in my teaching practice, but she didn't help me much more about how to organize my class and especially in how to help students to organize their experiments, their hands-on activities and something. Because my mentor is a traditional science
shows that it's not the only piece, but useful support
That's right.
is a contributor to resilience. It's not the only piece, right? So if you have somebody else that you're talking to that you find useful, the mentor is not useful.
That's right.
Right, but the other one is somewhat useful, your other mentor, and that might be somebody who actually contributes to your resilience. So we're trying to track that down right now.
Yes, I find that people that similar of my age, they can help me a lot.
Right. Isn't that, we were really surprised when we started looking at that data too. We're like, they're going to the other teachers who are in their third year or similar age or similar experience, or the new teachers. New teachers are much more enthusiastic, right, about what they want to do, and so they're looking for the other teachers who are enthusiastic, right? They don't want to hang out. They like, this is hard. I don't need to be with a bunch of people who are not enthusiastic. So this whole area is kind of, I think it would be a great, we're tracking this down. We're looking at trying to figure out who can talk to them more.
May I just kind of
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Are you going to challenge
So
us?
when I was looking at this ladders or whatever, so stairs.
Stairs.
So what is particularly interesting to me, I was thinking about to what extent teachers would go back to their university professors.
They should.
Yeah. So technically, yes, right? So if you want to bridge the gap between the school-based experience, your internship, and the experience 4 years in a teacher education institution.
Yeah.
But Professor John, do you receive a lot of requests from our graduates from local schools saying, please help me, I got some challenges in my practice.
They didn't ask me to help with the instruction, but they asked me how to solve a math problem.
Okay, so that's very interesting. So, but anyway, so that's the gap between, the student aspects. Yeah.
I don't think our new teachers see us as resources, right? But I'm not sure we are the right. I mean, I think it's how do we create resources that are really useful, right? But I love this idea, right? I want my teachers. When we surveyed our past graduates, it was eye-opening how almost ineffective we were. Even though by state standards we passed all the state metrics, we're very effective. We have high pass rates. Our students score well. They have their competencies on the teacher exams are high. Their portfolios are great. But when they go into the classroom, it's a whole different story. It's sad. It's sad.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
so are there other questions? Yeah, we don't have time anyway. So that's all the time we have.
I'm sorry.
Let's thank Professor Mao.